Thanks to Shari for her time and sharing many great insight with us. By the way, what I got for this week to political enlightenment theory is that the church will stay separate from the state, that capitalism in the United States is in a time of reformation. There's also the sense of doing the right thing that is refreshing. It's in the air. And indeed, that political enlightenment is happening for Americans. Having democracy in our country is something we are appreciating more. So much maturity has happened in the past 7 years. Also, the founding fathers were likely inspired by something higher than themselves because the Constitution has stood the test of time. In the meantime, during these intense trial and errors over the past years, the White House has been closing the gaps that are no longer self sustaining. May we continue to thrive together with benevolent intent for all here in the USA and around the world. Hi, this is Sylvia of Colorful Foresight, and we got Shari H from Voices from the Swamp. So today, enlightenment, political enlightenment on the magician. So let's see. I'm going to show you the card, and now I changed a different card because I felt guided to, and I know you like to use the image. Do you feel anything so far?
Well, one of the first things that you notice with the magician is they have all of the elements that are used in the tarot. There's a cup, there's a pentacle, there's a sword, he's holding a wand. So a magician is able to absorb all of these different elements and then use them for their disposal. It could be used for good, it could be used for bad. I think most people think of it as using it for good. And he's also got the wings of like an archangel,
Which goes perfect with political enlightenment, because sometimes when you hear the word political, you don't think anything positive. So, like you said, a magician, you have the ability to weed whatever you want, but do you use it for good or do you use it for bad? And I'm feeling like we're feeling that people are starting to do more of the right thing this week. So that's kind of an enlightenment thing. Sometimes we think enlightenment means you have to be spiritual, but enlightenment, the liftment, could be people start doing the right thing.
What we're looking at politically is there are a bunch of people that are getting ready to be really enlightened to what truth is. So enlightenment is not always pleasant, but it's necessary. When I think in terms of political enlightenment, I think in terms of turning on the light to find out where all the cockroaches are. What has happened has been a long time coming. Fortunately, we're starting to see people on the different sides are starting to see what's really been going on and accepting, wow, have we effed up here? Or, oh my God, I can't believe I bought into that.
I'm kind of curious what's going to happen this week, because all I keep hearing from you is how do we wield our power, the magician? And you kind of went with so. And what I like that you said, even with enlightenment, sometimes enlightenment is part of seeing what's not so great, like to see that.
Yeah.
That's the lightning. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, because if we don't see what's wrong, how can we fix it? If we don't strengthen our schools, pay teachers a living wage and support them in what they do, how can we expect the next generation to be able to grow up and take over the reins and run everything if they're so damn dumb that they don't know how it works? But I think the biggest thing is to recognize that we're going to have different opinions. You get people from two different ends that join in the middle and say, okay, you believe this, I believe that. Now, between the two of us, what can we agree on that's going to benefit everybody?
And you know what's funny?
And that's what we're supposed to be voting for.
It's funny, as you were speaking, I never thought just being a moderate Republican and being a moderate Democrat or independent or whatever is enlightenment in itself.
Very much so. I mean,
Had nothing to do with spirituality. Maybe it could be.
no, I mean, you have those that, especially those that are involved in the kind of churches that, scream hellfire and damnation, and, and now they've pulled the political realm into their pulpit. I mean, at that point, they're no longer a church. They're just a propaganda arm. And they should no longer be tax exempt because they're no longer a church. Politics and church don't belong together. They're separate. That's why the founders of this country made our founding documents and our country to be based on the foundation of law. We're not a Christian nation. None of them were Christian. They didn't believe in the Christian faith. Most of them thought it was a bunch of horse hooey. Oh yeah, a lot of them were Masons. A lot of them were what we called humanists. Uh, they weren't Christian. They'd been burned by the church back in England. They didn't want nothing to do with it. Enough is enough. And their idea was to build and run a country based on the law. And that's what kind of made us unique, is we weren't based on any one religion or any one spiritual belief system. We're based on the book of laws, good or bad. It has nothing to do with your spiritualness, which is why they, made a point of saying, keep church and state separate. They don't belong together. You go to your church on your church days. You believe in worship the way you want to. All power to you. I have no problem with that. The minute you bring your church into my political meeting, then we have a problem. Just like you can be a politician or whatever. You can believe whatever you want, work and fight for whatever you want. But the minute you bring that into your church, you're no longer a politician. Now you're being a propagandist.
It is interesting. You know what came to mind? I was thinking about the American flag, and a lot of Republicans didn't like, and I'm sure Democrat too. Like, I don't even understand it. To state the Pledge of Allegiance was removed. We don't really use it anymore. It's because there's the word God in it.
It wasn't there originally.
My thing
So
is,
the phrase "one nation under God" was added in the
wow.
40s, I think. The
I,
30s or the 40s. It was not the original Pledge of Allegiance.
I'm going to say, like, why did we get rid of it? Why didn't we just remove God and pledge allegiance to
Just go back to the original pledge. It was, "I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with life and liberty for all," whatever it is at the end. It was either during the Depression or during World War II. I don't remember which. Right in that time frame, they added that phrase in as a means of pulling the country together.
But all you had to do was rephrase the God, and now that I know the original didn't have that, why
Yeah,
don't
it wasn't in there at all.
and that way it allows everybody to be, if you're into God and all that, that's just something personal, but we can still respect the United States of America. I really think I would love to see that come back. And now that I know, I didn't really know, utilize that original, and we can have both sides be happy with that.
Yeah.
And then those who are against it because that that had nothing to do with religion, that's another story. But as far as like the God thing, very interesting. Wow,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. And I only knew that because back when Obama ran the first time, and people were accusing him of being a Muslim and being this, being that. And I remember saying to somebody one day, so, I mean, he's not. He claims to be a Christian like all the other politicians. But what if he was Muslim? So, what's the big deal about that? Oh my God, I opened a can of worms.
Mm-hmm.
And they started in on the Pledge of Allegiance thing at some point. That came into the conversation. And I said, well, why don't you just remove that sentence? And then you remove God from the political realm. And somebody else it was like we were at lunch one day or something, and somebody else sitting at the lunch table looked up and said, yeah, we never said that when I was in school. It wasn't added until I was in like middle school. And they added that phrase in. He was an older gentleman. And I remember looking at him and going, what? And he said, it was not in there originally. That's not the original Pledge of Allegiance we say today. He says, I was in middle school when they added that phrase and made us start saying it that way. He said, and there was a lot of pushback. A lot of parents didn't like that. Even though they were all Christian, they didn't like it because it was mixing church and state. Well, that got the best of me. So when I got home that night, I went on the great Google machine and looked it up, to find out. And sure enough, it was added at a much later date.
Yeah, but would it be nice if that came back in and
I posted something about it on my Facebook page like a year ago, and I still get comments that come to me from people who, for whatever reason, it comes across their feed even now. That one thing that I posted about the Pledge of Allegiance, and I get, oh my God, some of the things people have said to me over that, and you must be a heathen, and you're going to go to hell, and I'm like, what has that got to do with the Pledge of Allegiance? I'm not talking about my spirituality. You don't know what I believe in.
We're honoring the country. The religion thing. Yeah.
But we're a Christian nation. We were formed on Christian principles. Like, no, we weren't. We were formed on the basis of law.
So did they not put God in trust until much later on?
Right.
Oh, they didn't.
I don't think that was on the original money either. I'd have to double check that with the great and mighty Google. I'm not sure. But it seems like I remember at one point reading that was not. That's why you have so many extreme religious people have such a hard time with the fact that on the dollar bills, you have the pyramid with the eye that's lifting off. That's a Masonic emblem for the Masons. Washington was a Mason.
Probably a lot of them, like you said, were
Hancock, Adams, Franklin, all of them, they were all Masons, Benjamin Franklin was a Quaker, he was.
It's amazing.
Okay. Yeah, and just like when I found out myself, I was like mind blown. I was like, I had heard that Washington was a Mason when I was in school, because I remember somebody talking about pictures of him, of his inaugural paintings and stuff. The sash and the belt and the emblems he wore were all Masonic stuff. And he was like one of the top ranking, he was like in the hierarchy of the Masons. And that was the first president.
It's funny.
They wanted him to be a king. And he said, no, I'll be a president, but I'm not going to be a royalty. And then they wanted him to run for the next term. And he said, no, I don't need to run for another term. It's someone else's turn to come in and run the country. Because if I don't show my willingness for a peaceful transfer of power as the first president of a brand new country, then how can we expect anybody else to? And so that has never been an issue in this country. The transfer of power has always been peaceful, has always been the former hands off over to the new. They introduced them into the White House. You have people whose jobs are specifically designed so that on Inauguration Day, They go into the White House as soon as the current president and first lady leave, and they literally pack all their crap up and move them out, so that by the time the inauguration is over and the new president has been sworn in, their stuff is already in the White House. They've already moved in. And there's like a whole fleet of people that's their only job, is to move one out and bring the other one in. The only time that it gets easy for them is if it's a second term. That's one. And then they don't have to do that. But you have there's an entire system built around moving out the old, bringing in the new, so that the old president walks out and leaves for the last time, goes to the inauguration of the new president. And when that is over with, they get on, the helicopter, and they leave. That's like their last ride in a presidential, which is, it's like there's like Air Force One, which is the president's plane. The helicopter is Air Force Two. And they leave. That's the last ride they get.